All right, welcome to episode 50 of Tuesday Tips. Accidentally missed yesterday, so we're filming on a Wednesday, so it's kind of like Wednesday Tips, but really it's Tuesday Tips. That's what we're going to call it today. So this week we're talking about 7x7 centers, part 2. So as we mentioned, just like 6x6 centers, we did week 1. We kind of went over general 7x7 centers. Just in general, we're talking about. But week 2, we're diving a little deeper into the specifics of 7x7 centers. Week 6x6 kind of covers a lot of the ideas we used for 7x7 centers, so this video might not be as long, but we're kind of going to go over it. So the first thing you do on any big cube solve, 7x7 solve, obviously, is inspection. So what we look for in inspection is 2 bars. 2 bars, essentially, you should always be able to do 2 bars blind, I'd say, on inspection. It gets a little bit trickier on 7x7, but kind of at the elite level, usually there should be one pretty easy bar and one bar that might take a little bit of work. The best scrambles for 7x7 will have 2 bars done in like 4 or 5 moves. Essentially just like a 1 second 2 bars. And then the worst scrambles will have two bars that you might not even be able to completely memorize, but you should be able to at least track the pieces the entire way. So let's just do like a quick example, like here we have orange as a whole bar. So like this stuff like this is gonna happen a lot to where you just see bars just kind of show up. Okay, so like you make 2 bars in inspection. The biggest thing, the more specific advanced thing about building your first center on inspection is that you need to not only build those first 2 bars, but you need to set yourself up well for kind of continuing on. So if you know anything about like solving your big cubes, let's just pull up 2 bars. 1 sec. So we have 2 bars right here. This isn't as good as, say, this. This is better because you see here, in general, when you're building centers, you want as many pieces, like you've solved 2 bars, and then every other piece you want to be not the solid color. You don't want orange pieces that aren't in solid bars just kind of like hanging out here. So when you're looking at in your inspection for your first 2 centers on, or your first center on 7x7, which is your first 2 bars, it's important to be thinking about, if it's a bad scramble, you want to be thinking about how, like, can I reduce other pieces just kind of hanging out in the bars that are on the same face that I'm already solving? And B, if it's a good scramble, you want to be thinking about where are the other pieces going to end up. Like if you have a really easy scramble, so you have an easy scramble, let me just like set something up. I'm like, oh, I already got a bar done right here. This is really nice. And so like, not only should you be thinking, okay, now I can build my second bar really quickly, you should also be thinking, okay, I'm going to build my second bar, and then where are the third bar pieces going to track? That way when you finish your first bar, your next bar, like I finished that, and I know these pieces are over here to set up the next bar. I mentioned this a lot in last week's video, but building the middle bar isn't completely necessary. There's nothing really specific about the first center versus the other centers, but just keep tracking your middle bar just like the other times. Other things I was going to talk about in inspection, it is a lot easier to build. I mentioned this last week also. It's a lot easier to build 2x5s, 3x5s out of the middle in inspection because you have 15 seconds to build your first 2 bars. And so inspection, in my first center, a lot of times I'll build a 2x5 across the middle here or on the edge. This is way, way, way more common than if I saw it in the middle of the solve. I'm not comfortable enough to do this to build a 2x5 like this during the middle of the solve, but during inspection, it's something you want to be looking for. A lot of times there are going to be easier cases, and so we need to see that a lot of times there's going to be easy cases, and so it's good to know that it's going to be easy cases, and it's good to know that you get used to being able to build those. And then if you start looking for them in inspection, you'll get more used to it, and you can build it later on in your solving as well. Anyway, so after you build your first center, center 2 isn't really that. There's nothing too specific about center 2 different than center 1. There's a bit more priority on building your middle bar. Really, I was thinking that there isn't that much. I should have had another cube like solved to like last 4 centers, but let's skip ahead to the last 4 centers. Let me just get there real quick. I like messed up these centers like 80 times. Boom, 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 boom. Alright, so now you're on last 4. And now the key here with last 4 is you obviously, just like your other big cubes, you're building your centers. And if you're right-handed, you're placing them on the left, essentially. So I'm building my first 2 bars here. In this case, building a 2x5 across the top, in my opinion, even at the most advanced level, is pretty easy. I do this pretty consistently in my 7x7 solves, only when it's already kind of out there for you. It's especially easy when you're building your last 4 centers on the edge, so I definitely recommend doing this, but it's definitely something you got to be kind of accustomed to. And then I really would recommend building your middle bar in the first 1, 2, or 3 bars, because if you have essentially, you want to reduce down your forced slice moves, and if you have something set up like this, now you're forced to kind of save this right bar while you're building your middle bar, and it's going to just lead to a lot more unnecessary slice moves that you really didn't want to. Obviously, there are exceptions to every rule, and if there's something really easy, you should go ahead and do that, but that's kind of the recommendation there. And then your 3rd and 4th centers are pretty much the same. I got stuck in that. Okay, so then your last 2 centers, this is kind of the tricky part here. So the last 2 centers, you pretty much need to do 3 things. You build your 2 bars on the left, you build your middle bar, and you build your 2 bars on the right. Well, 4 things. You build your 2 bars on the left, you build your middle bar, then you build your 4th bar, and then you build your 5th bar. Almost always, well, you build 4 and 5 in that order, and then, so the thing is for 7x7, when you're building your 2 bars on left, it gets kind of tricky just because you need to figure out, you need to pick if you're building your middle bar or your 2 bars on left first. In this case, I'm obviously building my middle bar first because it's already built here. And then if you built your middle bar first, you then build you pretty much then build either your far left bar, you build these 2 bars individually. So I built this bar, and then I built the far left bar, and that works just fine. But the other thing is, if you don't build your middle bar first, I'd highly recommend building your other 2 bars at the same time. So say you don't need to build your middle bar, you're like, okay, I can't even mix it up. So like, you're not building your middle bar first, but a lot of times if you're not going to build your middle bar first, you're going to see an easy case like, say we have like this. Okay, well this middle bar is already built, but we're going to pretend it's not. A lot of times it's going to be easy, just like on 6x6. It's the same thing as building your left 2 bars on 6x6 on last 2 centers. You just build your middle 2 bars at the same time by building a 2x5. This is going to be incredibly easy because when you're doing your last 2 centers, there's only so many spots for the pieces to go. That's just kind of the order of operations there, in my opinion. Either pick whatever's easiest, build your 2 bars on left first, or build your center, and then do that in that order. Keep in mind that if your 2 bars on left are really easy, it's probably the better option. The only thing though is that if you build your 2 bars first, you can get some weird cases with your last bar here. Like this is really easy because it's M, U, M prime. But there's some other weirder cases where pieces are kind of like, there's no obvious case here. So here you gotta do something like this, which is a little less fortunate. It's not bad, but it's definitely not as good. And then you pretty much want to build your 4th bar and then your 5th bar in that order. Definitely go inside then out. I've really never almost literally never gotten to a case where you actually want to build your outer bar and then the middle bar inside here. I think that's incredibly, you'd have to get so insanely lucky for it to be worth it. Like it'd have to be like completely free and not that bad of a middle bar because you're just forcing yourself into a lot of commutators here. Another cool trick, the only other trick I kind of have here is that on your last center, so say you had something, no, okay, not like this. Say you had something like, well, this is a simple case. So say it's something like this. So you might think that like, oh, in this case, you need to do 2 commutators, right? Because you have 2 pieces out, these 2 commutators. But since this is a middle piece, you can do, you can set it like this and then do M, U2, M prime. And then that'll solve that piece right there. So that case was obviously the worst case when it's literally in place of a commutator. But a lot of times you'll get stuff like things just hanging out kind of like this, and then this is a really quick MU2 M prime to pair it up, and then you can insert. So that's something to always keep in mind when you're building your last bar. You really should never have to do 3 commutators, because if you're doing 3 commutators, you did a commutator for the middle and then both edges, and that's just kind of ridiculous. You only ever have to do 1, and 2 is still kind of bad, but sometimes the MU2 M prime case isn't the easiest, and so I can understand doing 2, but never do 3. If you do 3, it's like pretty awful. So yeah, that's all I really have to say about specific 7x7 centers. Next week, we're going to be talking about 5x5 last 4 edges. Next 3 weeks will be 5, 6, and 7 last 4 edges, which are going to be pretty interesting because that's kind of a really big part of the solve. It's less freestyle and more structured, and really important because it really slows down a lot of people, I think. So yeah, tune in for that.